Telling the story of Benin, the Beninese, and the ancient Benin Empire is like the famous story of three blind people who were touching an elephant tusk, the elephant's trunk, the elephant's legs. Each will have a different tale to tell. Nekwe Obasige has chosen to tell the Benin story from a perspective of the empire's relationship with the Europeans since 1400 AD, hence the book's title, Great Benin, the Alcazar of Post-Colonial Culture and its relationship with the Europeans since 1400 AD. There are important takeaways in Chapter 4, which I am reviewing for the purpose of this Zoom launch. Who were the ancient Beninese? Importantly, they were an advanced society with complex structures and sophistication, which the Europeans discovered and were already a great people, and not that colonialism or contact with the Europeans made them any more than the greatness they had. The impact of Benin, nay Africa, was already there, and the importance of Benin was a phenomenon the Europeans were surprised to know, long before, in fact, as the chapter says, 7 years before Columbus discovered the Americas. The impact of Benin's contact on Portugal and the rest of Europe led beyond mercantilism to the discovery of a new route to India, China, and the Far East. Somehow, the envy of the Europeans on the civilization of the Beninese and other Africans led to the 1884 Berlin Conference, which not only led to the partitioning of Africa, led to the forced Christianization of the Benin people and other Africans, and ultimately to the 1887 expedition against the Beninese and the exile of their king to Calabar. And lastly, the entry point of the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, and the British was through the port of Ugoton, located on the Benin River, from where, in a distance of some 10 leagues in the old way of land measurement and calculations, the Europeans trekked from the coast at Ugoton to Benin to establish trade and diplomatic relations. Ugoton was important for trade and international relations. It was such a busy entry port that in the Benin belief system, the Beninese considered that their point of departure in life from this earth was through Ugoton, and hence the statement describing Ugoton for the Beninese was Okenalubode Nerenu Okenalubode Nerimi Layowa. In other words, loosely translated, Ugoton, the place where human spirits departed this life for eternal home. Coming to the main text of chapter 4, one may wonder what made the Europeans to visit Benin. It was the Portuguese who were the first to visit in mid-1480, and the first Portuguese to come was João Afonso de Aveiro in the reign of Obaywari I, and the visits and exchanges were to continue for the next 400 years. Some observations that initially caught the Portuguese visitors were Benin body markings, which was mandatory in those days when intertribal wars was rife, so as to identify a Benin indigene, as well as frauders, a mark above the eyebrows, which was quite peculiar to the Negro people. Then the uniqueness of the people and their societal structure, and that the Beninese were well-organized people, intrinsically complex and firm in decision-making. Between 1504 and 1550, under the king, or what we call Oba Ozolwa, and his son, later who became Oba Isige, the Portuguese-Benin relationship got more cordial, such that when Oba Isige was on the throne, the relationship resulted in diplomatic envoy exchanges, material exchanges like European guns, coral beads, cowries, and even the Manila currency, while the Beninese supplied pepper, palm kernels, slaves, and ivory. The success of the relationships, diplomacy, economic development, and the military might of the Oba and trade with the Portuguese attracted the British to sail to Ugoton, a journey which sometimes took 6 months to encounter the Beninese. Not long, the Dutch and French followed suit. All this proved that Benin City was a major entrepôt and a trading center between the Europeans and other West African states in the Guinea coast. It is significant to note that between 1550 and 1580, when as much as 2 ships came from Bristol in England under the command of a Briton, Thomas Wyndham, and a Portuguese, Antonio Penteado, the Meta king, Oba Orobua, who spoke fluent Portuguese and had, while a crown prince, had received Western education, and even earlier than that, in 1485, a priest of one of the deities, Olokun, who was an enogie, or what you may call a duke of Ewoton, dukedom, had been sent as an ambassador to the royal court in Lisbon, Portugal. This was a full 7 years before Christopher Columbus set sail and was said to have discovered America. So, for a people who had robust international experience in trade and diplomacy from the mid-15th century, why would their kingdom suffer a punitive expedition in 1887 and have their king dethroned and exiled, and a king's palace looted with such impunity by the British? And the chapter recalls that despite the Benin ambassador to Portugal being described by a colonist, Henry Roth, as a man of prudence and natural knowledge, why would such mishap befall the kingdom? The answer lies in the 1884 to 1885 Berlin Conference, when the Europeans had a hidden agenda other than trade. They had a colonialism agenda and a desire to supplant the indigenous system of beliefs. In the words of the author, to Christianize the Benin people and eradicate the indigenous belief system. And when the Portuguese Alvaro came visiting, he had with him rich dresses and presents, and importantly, things that would strengthen the Beninese in their Catholic faith and avoid heresies and idolatries and things fetish. The fall of the Benin Empire was clearly due to the false civilizing mission of the Europeans, who envied the strength of the people and wanted the land for themselves. Today, their rich culture and cultural symbols and religion has been much whittled down, but their symbol of monarchy, the king, who is the Oba, still remains and is very much revered. The empire did not end without leaving a mark in changing the course of history and global travel routes. A conversation between the Olokun priest, the Duke of Ugoton, and the ambassador to Portugal then provided a clue to the Europeans, especially to King John II of Portugal, who asked the sailor Bartholomew Diaz to avoid the land route through the occupied or the then occupied Muslim Asian countries and to sail through the southern tip of Africa, which now was renamed as the Cape of Good Hope, en route to India, China, and the Far East. This not only created a new merchant travel route, but enabled the Europeans to know that Africa had a tip and that Africa was not part of the Antarctica. These discoveries were indeed before the continent of the Americas were made. And also Ugoton on the Benin River acquired an importance of a harbor where the Portuguese, British, French, and the Dutch landed in that space of 400 years from the year 1456 as they sought to advance their various missions into the interior of the West African coast. For the Beninese, Ugoton remains a point of departure at death into the unseen world beyond, which is why they style it Okenalubode Nerimi Layowa, a point of departure from this earth unto the great beyond. It was then an exploration of a great people and the great encounter of civilizations, or do we call it the clash of civilizations, told in chapter 4 of the book. That's what we're reviewing in the book called Great Benin, the Alcazar of Post-Colonial Culture and its Relationships with the Europeans since 1400 AD.